I wonder if anyone knows how to get through this labyrinth.
Hello everybody, this is a very special video which I don't know how successful this is going to be, and I felt like it was a bit presumptuous to do the video, but I was speaking about it with a close friend of mine, and she, the person who actually turned me on to self-publishing, and she said it wasn't presumptuous, just tell my story. So this is my version of events. This is my reaction to a fantastic video that was by a YouTuber called Mandi, who's like an author, self-published author, that's done a series of really good videos about self-publishing, really detailed. She is extremely professional in what she does, and there's no doubt about the fact that the reason why there are differences between what I'm going to say and what she says in her videos is because she's much more professional about what she does. And literally, I was so impressed by what she said in this video that I'm going to link below, and the end result of the book that she was holding up, that was the sort of finished product of all the money she put into the project. It just proves that self-publishing is not necessarily something that looks DIY or that is really obviously, visibly a different kind of book. I don't think you'd be able to tell her books from any other traditionally published book on any shelf. She's put a lot of time, effort, money into making sure that her books stand out, but don't stand out because they look cheap. They stand out for other reasons, and you know, so you know, the content of her video, which was called "How Much It Costs for Me to Self-Publish My Books," I think it's called, and she does cover a lot of her books, but she does concentrate on the latest book because I think she did that because she kept learning lessons as she was going along. So the reason why I thought it would be good for me to do mine is because my books didn't cost anywhere near the same amount of money, and because there was a massive price tag in the video that she did, I thought it might put people off. And the one thing about self-publishing, you know, it's almost like, you know, the DIY indie music industry in the late 70s and 80s, and you know, there's like all this possibility to do it with not a lot of investment if you haven't got that kind of money to invest. So I mean, when at one point she said something, and I just thought, how do you even get that sort of money, you know? And there clearly has to be that idea that you've got that kind of faith in what you're writing, that kind of confidence that you're going to get that money back. So just off the bat, I'll just say now that one of the things that she said cost money, the copy editor, which she's absolutely right, is really important. And she said she puts the most amount of money into the copy editor. She said for her, for that particular book she was talking about, was $1,244.22. I hesitated, I think it was dollars, but $1,200. Even if it's £1,200, well, that'd be even more. But any point is, that's a lot of money. That is a huge investment. And I know during the video she said about the fact that if you're going to look at necessary costs, then marketing might not be something you want to put the money into, which is fair enough. But marketing is important because you want people to read it. But again, that's a whole can of worms. I mean, I was going to do a video about this the marketing thing that I've come across that's been, it's just halted what I was doing because I put some money into it and it didn't go anywhere, and I thought it was a waste of money. So I was going to talk about that on the channel and see what other people's experiences and thoughts were. But the point is, what I was going to do was go through all of my books and talk about the process of making them and what it cost me and why I did it the way I did it, if you like. So just to kind of cover what Mandi Lynn says first, she talks about how the cover design costs money. She talks about the copy editor, and obviously I gave you that idea of the cost that racked up for the last book she wrote, and the proofreader is a similar kind of necessity, but the proofreader or the copy editor, marketing, buying author copies, and formatting. So she uses a program for formatting. So I'll talk about all those things when I talk about these books. Okay, so the first book I wrote was 4 years ago, and 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And that was the 10 Tales of Transformation. So I didn't intend to write a full book at the time. I wrote one story. It went down really well with the people that I gave the story to read, and they really liked it. And I kind of had it kind of stored away. And I thought, well, if I have a few other ideas, maybe I could make a book out of it, of short stories, which I did. And also during that process, I found out about self-publishing and found out about Kindle Direct publishing, which is free to use. So one of the things about the actual publishing end of it, just putting it out there, is free. They just take a commission from what you sell. So the Amazon service, Kindle Direct Publishing, is what I've been using. So 10 Tales Transformation, I really, really love the cover. And the cover is a very specific cover. This is completely inspired by one of the stories, which is called Whatever Happened to Ethel Pinchworthy, which is a story about this old woman who gets abducted by aliens. And it's one of my favourite stories in it, and I think it's gone down well with a lot of people that read it. But the point is, a friend of mine did this picture. So he's one of my oldest friends, and he's got a great visual eye. I knew he could do it. He said he would do it. He did it as a favour. So I gave him a copy of the book, but other than that, didn't cost me anything. So if you have a friend who's willing to do that, then awesome. So that didn't cost me anything. I mean, if circumstances were different and I was just selling absolutely tons and tons of them, because there's a very small amount of people that have read this, then who knows, maybe I could chuck some money at him. But ultimately, he did it for me as a favour, and we enjoyed the process, I think, of selecting what we would do, and I think he's pleased with the picture as well. And yeah, it's a very special cover, I think. So 10 Tales of Transformation, and all the things like the design you get with KDP, where you figure out what picture you're going to use, what the blurb is on the back, and all that kind of stuff, is a template that the KDP program gives you when you first submit the transcript, and you get through the process of making it into a book. So it's like a template it gives you. So my first foray into self-publishing, the cover was free. I didn't have a copy editor or a proofreader, and I've read it with that in mind after publishing. There's a second edition of this now where I've corrected some things in it. I'm sure if I read it again, there'll be other things I'd need to correct. So, there are some imperfections that are going to be in this book because I didn't have a copy editor or a proofreader. So that is definitely true. And clearly, I spent a good deal of time at the beginning of this video saying how professional Mandi Lynn's books looked, and clearly if she spent £1,200 or $1,200 on a copy editor, there's clearly not going to be any typos or any grammatical errors and things like that. And the thing about a copy editor and a proofreader is the way that you see things when you read something back. You read what you expect to read. You see what you expect to see. So it's harder for the author to see typos and to see issues with the text. So that's why it's better to have a fresh pair of eyes. So it is worth getting one, always worth getting one. But I didn't have one for that. I got well excited about publishing it. And so far, this has never been properly proofread, but lots of people have read it. And a few people have told me some things they found. But ultimately, I'm fairly confident that it's not too bad. But I don't know. I am very, very proud of it. And I think the stories are good. But there might be some issues with the fact that it's not had a proofreader. I don't know. I know The Bookish Bryants read this recently, and I know Pax from Pax Panic has read it recently, and they haven't sent me messages saying, Gareth, you need to proofread this thing. But, you know, they may have been being polite. I don't know. But, yeah, just, you know, I'd be a fool not to say how important that would have been. But, you know, in my first book, I got well excited about putting it out there, and there it is. There's a second edition because I did correct some things. But there we are. So 10 stories, some of them quite serious and some of them not very serious at all. Okay, so I did that, and then the way I wrote the stories as well, I may have said this in a different video, I progressively made them bigger as I went along. So they were like little achievements each time. So I wanted to build a story with more structure in it, with more characters in it, with more scenes in it. So there are some stories where it was a deliberate attempt to enlarge the story, enlarge the canvas, enlarge the storytelling element of it. So I got to the point when I did the Brown Yelp Gang story that's in there. I can't remember what it's called. No Sleep Till Corsilia. No Sleep Till Corsilia. That's what it's called. When I wrote that was the biggest one in the book, and that was the last one that I'd written for the... No, it was the second to last one I'd written for the collection, and that's about 70 pages. So that was an attempt to do something with lots of different developments in the story. There's another one I wrote. The last one I wrote was the All for Lena one, which is the one about obsession, which I wanted to write a science fiction story where a roguish trader is fooled by an alien trait that allowed them to basically be like a siren, but it ends up with them getting involved in a crime because of it. So I wanted to do that as a story, and so All for Lena was the last one I wrote. So anyway, I was developing the ideas of writing a story and trying to develop my craft while I was doing that. And then I thought, okay, I've done that. Let's try and write a novel. So I stewed with a time travel idea for a while, and I wanted to do a time travel story based around 3 English teenagers, because I thought it'd be fun to have some sort of the kind of banter I see a lot with my students. And I like the idea of using some of the English colloquialisms in their sort of riffing off each other, and they're jeering at each other and that sort of thing. So I wanted to do that, and I like the idea of a time travel thing. And I wanted to put them in the early modern period or the medieval period, and have them trying to deal with having no luxuries and having this sort of basic living standard while trying to get back to present day. That was the initial idea, and I liked the idea, but then I got really excited about the idea of just putting them on a planet that I started creating, which was this sort of frozen planet where the main kind of the dominant species was living underground. So that was my book, Out Among the Ice Beacons. And for this similar situation, I did send this to a friend. I sent the first 3 chapters to a friend, and he gave me some really interesting advice, which I thought I was doing. He said, "Oh, make sure you do this," and I thought I was doing it, but it made me realise I clearly wasn't doing it enough, because he gave me this advice. So I kind of honed in on that a little bit more, and that was really good advice. And the cover, which a lot of people really love the cover, that's a photograph that I took from a friend who I knew had done photographs with snow and sort of snowy landscapes. So I asked her if I could use one of her photographs. So again, it was a free cover. The advice I got from my friend was free. I do think that if you can't afford the copy editor or proofreader, there's a lot of mileage you can get from sharing it with friends, seeing what their advice is, seeing what their reaction is, and seeing what they spot as well with the grammatical errors and things like that. So that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of power in doing that. So anyway, so I got some advice from my friend for this, but other than that, it hasn't been proofread. But again, I did notice a few things, and another friend of mine noticed two specific problems with a couple of bits in the text. So I changed it, and that's now a second edition because I changed some things in it just to correct some things. I didn't do anything else with it, just corrected like typos and things like that, just silly things like that. And actually, Michael K. Vaughan's now reviewed this, and he said there's a really a dodgy mistake in it where a piece of dialogue is replied to in a nonsensical way, and I need to look at that because that's a bad mistake. He also said that subjectively he would have liked more world building, which I get, but I think that's quite subjective, and I like the pace of the book, and I don't want the book to be any bigger, so I like where it is. As far as that sort of thing go, the amount of world building I'm happy with, but I definitely need to correct that mistake if I can find it. So there may be a third edition coming out which will have that mistake sorted out. But as far as I know, that might be the last mistake that's in there. But again, it's not had a proofreader. It does pay to sort of put that cost into the cost of doing it if you can. But because I didn't give this to enough people to read to spot those kind of things. So that was my first full novel. So then, going back to my original, my story, No Sleep Till Corsilia, I really did want to go back to those characters again, and I had a plan to write a full novel with those characters, and I did. The Brown Yelp Gang. That's probably my biggest literary achievement. This has been proofread. This has been proofread by two different people. Again, both of them did it for nothing for me, and both of them, one of them does it as a profession, and the other one does it. The other one was actually like extremely detailed, fantastic. What he did for me, and he's just done a lot of it over the years. So it's not his profession or anything, but he's done a lot of it. So it's been more thoroughly proofread. And he picked up on some things that were really useful for me. So I'm very confident about this book not having any dodgy bits in it, but it is very silly. So I also like the fact that Dave, the guy that did most of the proofreading, he got where it's coming from. He didn't send me any message going, "Did you mean to write this?" Because he knew that sometimes I really did mean to write that, and some of it was quite silly. So I'd love people to read this, and it has been proofread, but again, it didn't cost me any money. The cover did. So the cover did cost me some money, and what I did was I saved money that I got from selling physical copies of these. So I got loads of author copies of these, and as I sold them, I put the money aside, and then when I got £200, I commissioned this cover. So this cover is by a very famous cartoonist called Hunt Emerson. So I don't know if you can tell that from the style of the artistry, but he's quite distinctive, and he now draws for the Beano, but he's done loads for Knockabout comics, and he's worked in the same circles as Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and all that sort of stuff. But he's done drawings for the BBC and all that. But yeah, he's a lovely man as well, because he's actually done 6 Bemis covers as well. But anyway, I commissioned this. I really wanted him. I knew that I wanted a Hunt Emerson cover for this, and I wanted it to be really obviously a comedy from the cover. So, I mean, it's literally kind of comedy where the lead singer has got 3 heads, so you've got inbuilt 3-part harmony, that kind of humour. So the Brown Yelp Gang did cost me money with the cover, but I got my really good proofreading done from a friend that was doing it for free. So that was not too bad, but it did cost me money with the cover. So before I get on to these last two, I just want to say that the formatting has been an issue for me, and really, out of all the books I've done, there's only one book that I've been absolutely happy with the formatting. So that's something I'm I'm developing knowledge of it and trying to get better at it as I go along. And what I've done for some of these books is bought author copies, which are only like £4, £5 a go, and then looked at it. If it was wrong, tried to adjust it, do it again. And like one of the books, it took me about 4 goes. So there was like 4 different versions where I'd get it and I'd go, no, that's not right, and then I have to change it. So that it's not just costing money, but that can cost weeks and stress and things like that. So time and stress and frustration, that kind of thing. So that is a thing, but you know, first world problems. So the last 2 books, I got a little bit better with the formatting, and the next one is my book that I'm really happy with the formatting. So this is a book of my lyrics. So again, KDP, it's got that kind of really recognizable blurb with a picture, and the cover is simply a picture of me back in my early 20s when I had my long hair, playing in a forest. It's a nice picture that someone took of me, and I've used it. Didn't cost me any money to do the cover. You can't always do that, but to be honest though, if you want to do a cheap cover, you don't have to pay for Hannah Emerson to do it. You can get all sorts of different ways you can do a cheap cover. You don't have to be an expert on Photoshop. You can just do it with a photo, with a cropped photo or something that you know. You can do all sorts of things with like an inventive approach to your cover. But this is just a photo of me. But I really like the way it's formatted. For me, this is exactly what I wanted to see. So I do like that. And I think I got it right first time, weirdly. So the next one I didn't. But this one, it came into in the post, and I was so pleased. And so this is, again, one that I've sold in gigs when I've done. Because usually people who are interested in my lyrics tend to be people who are interested in Bemis. But again, I've been selling these books in person, and I think that's one of the things that, you know, these may not be sold in shops, and it may be, you know, because it's that DIY thing, it may not be seen as a proper book, or, you know, a friend of mine on BookTube said it doesn't even count. That might be a thing for some people, but I can physically sell these myself, you know, and I've got a deal with I've got an arrangement with a shop in Portsmouth that's happy for me to do a promotion day where I can be there all day and try and sell the next book I'm doing, which is great. So that's a physical thing you can do with these physical books that you get. So that was the lyrics book, and I was really happy with it. Again, didn't cost me anything. It didn't cost me. The only thing it cost me was the author copy, which was fine, and in the end, I was happy with that. So that was fine. And then this one is the last thing I published, which is the Permanent Verb poems collection. And these are poems that have been sort of gathering for years. I'm kind of happy with the format, but I would like it a little bit like, so there wasn't so much gap in the top and the bottom, really. That would be ideal. But, you know, it's fine. I'm not going to keep doing it. I'm happy with it. But that was a cover design that my daughter did, and she's really good at digital art, and I want her to do the next one. She's got the idea. She's going to do that soon. So that next poetry collection should have another cover from her. Lots of people like the cover, which is awesome. And again, it's got the classic picture with a blurb on the back. So, you know, there's a bit of a consistency with that. But this did take me a few author copies to do this. So I kept getting the formatting wrong, and it was driving me nuts. I was really ballsing it up. But anyway, I did sort it out, and this is okay. I'm quite happy with that. And I'm very happy with the contents. I'm very proud of that book. So I do think the poems are good. And I've been a little bit more ambitious this time with the new one, because I'm trying to build this city with different characters. So it kind of gives you a sense that I haven't spent that much money, and what I have spent, I've tried to use the money that I've got from selling the previous books and then I've used that to get the commissioned cover. Oh, and I've also got in the bag, I've got the cover of the sequel to the Brown Yelp Gang already done, and that's on file because I got Hunt Emerson. I paid for Hunt Emerson to do this second cover, so that's going to be called The Brown Yelp Gang Goes to Pieces, and I have the cover for that already done. So that I'm hoping to write that in the next sort of year, but I wanted to get that done really quickly, the cover. So that's awesome. So that's going to be out at some point. So that won't cost me any money because I've already sorted it out with sales from the other books. So, you know, the fact that I had enough to essentially spend almost £500 on covers for 2 of the books means that, you know, I was selling these in person, which is really cool. And I was selling a lot of them at gigs and that. So, you know, they it's not masses of money, but if they're not getting put in shops and they're in this huge sea of books on Amazon and nobody ever talks about them, it's still good that you can say that some people have read them and some people are buying them. So I do think it's quite nice that you can say that. It's completely DIY. I haven't had a publisher or you know, that kind of thing. And I just think the overall message I'm trying to give here is I wouldn't want anyone to be put off if they wanted to self-publish something and they had a good story in them, or they wanted to write a poetry collection or something like that, and they watch a video from Mandi and then it's like, well, I can't spend £1,500 on what I'm doing, whatever, and it puts them off. You know, you can do that a lot cheaper. And, you know, I'll say again that her books look incredible. They look really, really professional, fantastic, and her videos are well worth watching. And I was really impressed with the videos. So don't want to take anything away from what she says because she knows what she's doing, and she's put a lot of money into marketing, and it's her job now. So that's amazing. So, you know, what I'm saying is utter bollocks in comparison to what she's saying. But clearly, there are going to be some writers that are good writers but haven't got any money. And they haven't got a publisher. They haven't got any way of making the world know that they're good. And they might need to do it on the cheap like that. So all I wanted to say is that the KDP service that Amazon do, Kindle Direct Publishing, is free. And if you even did a cover where it was just the writing and nothing else, you could still put it out there for nothing if you wanted to. So there we are. I thought that was kind of an important message, but I don't know what you think. I don't want it to sound presumptuous because literally nobody reads these books and there's clearly issues with some of them. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.